This is the Rush Discuss, where the discuss is Rush. So this week, we are finishing out the bracket, the most popular Rush song bracket. We're going to do a refresher on what the last few weeks have been, the songs that we picked, and kind of rehashing why this bracket was built the way it was. So week one, we battled out Spirit of Radio versus Subdivisions. Subdivisions came out on top there. Week two was Tom Sawyer versus Closer to the Heart, and Tom Sawyer, to the surprise of both Juliana and myself,
yeah,
won out there. And then week three, Red Barchetta versus Fly By Night, and Fly By Night was the winner there. And then last week, Limelight versus Time Stands Still, with Time Stands Still coming out on top. And I said last week that I reserve all rights to mess with the bracket as much as I want as far as the outcomes with the pair-ups. But in looking at the way that this bracket just flowed, the pair-ups actually were pretty decent just through.
Yeah, I think that the messing with the pairs would have messed with the flow. I think that they're really good pairs to compare against. So then with all of those winners, to continue the bracket, we'll now be choosing between Subdivisions versus Tom Sawyer as a grouping, and then also Fly By Night versus Time Stand Still as another grouping.
And then, of course, by the end of this episode, we'll be left with the top popular song from Rush that we would, if we had to pick and exclude all the other ones in this bracket, what our top pick would be.
And if you're a brand new listener and you would say, how could you ever have done this to Rush? This is just for fun. This is just to, if we had to, what would we choose? And it's been a fun exercise. You can go back and see all the previous brackets and choose your own bracket, or if you agree with us, cool. If not, make your own bracket, and then we will see what the final song is for us and all of you. It'd be cool to see if you guys have a different idea or a different opinion of what you think would be the final one.
Yeah, and the methodology behind picking all of this, I kind of went into in the first episode, but just a refresher, I went through every single Rush song from Fly By Night on. Obviously didn't do Feedback because those weren't original songs, and then took out BU2B2 because that's
Feedback. You should explain that. Is that a cover album they did?
Yeah, that was for their 30th anniversary tour. They were wondering what were they going to tour about, because normally they would tour with the release of a new album, and they didn't have a new body of work yet, and so they thought it would be pretty fun to just do an EP of covers of songs that they felt influenced them growing up. So
all that to say, that album is not included in these brackets.
Correct. Just original Rush songs.
Except for their first album.
Yes. Original Rush songs with Neil Peart in the mix.
Yes.
And then, like I said, BU2B2 from their final album, Clockwork Angels, was also not in the mix. One, because we needed an even number. But two, in my mind, it's not really a full song.
It's a reprise.
It's a reprise and a segue.
Right. So it gets enough attention in BU2B.
Yeah. It's more of a storytelling device
more
than anything in that album. That left 154 songs. First, what I did is I took them all into different units.
Categories.
So, different categories. So this first category being the most popular Rush songs. Just if you did a search of the most popular Rush songs, what comes up? And I picked 8 of those and then grouped them how I felt like. The next grouping that we'll be covering is the least popular. And then there's a grouping for the epics, for the instrumentals. Obviously, there's crossover with some of the categories, but it really is what made it even possible to pair things.
All for just this fun exercise. You could do it in a million different ways. This is not the one way to do this, but this is the way we chose to do it, just for this cool, exciting project.
Yes, with the idea being that at the end of this whole project, there will be, I believe it's 14 different groups. There will be 14 different songs that kind of would be our pick out of each of those groups to present to someone saying, this is what Julianne and I feel are good songs to represent each of these different categories.
But really listen to every single one of them.
Exactly. The subplot to this whole exercise is to be able to cover each of these songs and hopefully get people to look at these songs closer than they would normally look at them.
Get more Rush fans.
Exactly. It's disappointing that a lot of people came onto the Rush bandwagon so late, but at the same time, whenever you get here, you're in for a ride. Hopefully this will help you in your Rush journey to kind of give you ideas of how to explore their discography.
Well, let's get to this final bracket of the most popular Rush songs. Should we start with Subdivisions and Tom Sawyer?
Yeah. So
Interesting pairing. I love how the pairings have turned out.
it is very interesting because you have Tom Sawyer, which is the
Rush
opening
song.
track of the Rush album. That anybody who is into mainstream music, that's the Rush album that they'll know.
And the Rush song.
Yeah, and
Everybody
that's
knows Tom Sawyer.
the song that everybody would know. And then you contrast that with Subdivisions, which is the opener for the next album, which a lot of people point to as being where they had to leave the Rush bandwagon.
Which is so sad because that album is straight fire.
Because a lot of people were looking at Signals to be Moving Pictures Part 2.
Oh, totally understandable. Like, that happens all the time. Bands change their sound. This is completely unrelated. But I think about if there's any Panic at the Disco fans, that first album, I think it came out in 2005. It was, punk, alternative rock. And then they finally came out with this new album, I believe, I can't name the date off the top of my head, but a couple of years later, and it's the album Pretty Odd, and it's like completely like light and fluffy and completely different sound, and people were like, what is this? But I love that album. I love how different it is. I love the different direction that it took, and so it's easy to say like, this is the worst music ever when you're expecting it to be old Rush or old Panic at the Disco. But then if you appreciate where they're going from there, and then also being able to look at everything as a whole from that point on and seeing how they progress, man, that album is like so good.
Yeah. I think with music, especially with popular music, it's really difficult for people to kind of separate out different approaches. Wherever they first meet a band, that's where they expect the band to be wherever they turn. And I don't know if that's just because of the way that radio developed with just playing popular hits that came about from the record labels picking out which one would be kind of putting the band's best foot forward, or which then bands would then have a little bit of say if we want this to be the single or whatever. And so then you're just getting little bits and pieces of all these different bands, and then people hear those and decide, oh, I like this band, I like this sound, and in their minds that sound is that band.
Yeah.
And so then it can be hard for them to stick with the band if they start going in a different direction. And some people get really upset because they have such an emotional response to wherever they met this band, that if they deviate, it almost feels like a betrayal.
Yeah, you can get really fired up about stuff like that. I personally love the direction that Rush went after Moving Pictures. And I've said this, I think, in a previous episode, that Moving Pictures is not actually my favorite Rush album. Anyways, I would choose Signals over Moving Pictures. But in terms of these two songs, though, choosing one, I do love Subdivisions. And I appreciate the message that is in Subdivisions as well. But still, Tom Sawyer is such a strong song.
Mm-hmm. But I don't know. For me, I still lean towards Subdivisions over Tom Sawyer because, and it's also interesting because both songs are very difficult drum parts, and they're both songs that Neil enjoyed playing ever since he wrote those parts. Both of them were still a challenge. I personally prefer the drum part to Subdivisions just because of how many different mood shifts there are, how many different rhythms he has going, and there's a lot more interplay with the other parts, and it really just drives the song a lot more strongly, I think. And so even though there isn't the epic fill that Tom Sawyer has, I feel like it's more of an orchestrated drum part. There are just so many different voices that he gives in that part. And then you have, I actually prefer the guitar solo in Subdivisions over Tom Sawyer as well.
Well, we got to talk about the synth solos in Subdivisions too.
That's true.
That are also extremely entertaining to play. Me and Adam, when we want to jam, we play Subdivisions. He plays the bass part, I play the synth part just for fun. And it is extremely fun to do. I mean, I kind of went into this already knowing that I would choose Subdivisions, but also wanting to give Tom Sawyer its fair attention because it is
for sure.
the song. But I mean, you know me, I would have just chosen Subdivisions without even talking about Tom Sawyer.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, I've learned Tom Sawyer as well on guitar and
you've learned like tons
bass.
of Rush songs.
Yeah.
Way more.
Which shout out to the Rush Tablature Project.
Yeah.
If any of you listening want to learn Rush songs and are looking for good tabs, Rush Tablature Project, cygnusproductions.com/RTP. That is the only resource that I trust for accurate Rush tabs. The guys over there have been doing this since 97.
Before the internet was?
But no, they put in a lot of effort. They're extremely knowledgeable about Rush, and it's been a group effort of refining these tabs and making these changes. They have a cool thing they've done every year, probably about that time as well, that they started the tab project called TabCon, where they get together each year in the Midwest and they come having learned a bunch of different songs on their instruments. They come together and then they get one shot to play that song with these people, and they just have a great old time. Dream of mine to get there at some point in the flesh, but no, that side tangent just to really give them the props that they deserve, because as a musician wanting to learn this complicated music, to have a really great resource like that is really priceless. And if you want to get proficient at whatever your instrument is, if you play the guitar, bass, or drums, learn Rush.
Yeah, absolutely.
You will become proficient at your instrument.
And you'll never be bored. You will have plenty to work on and plenty to listen to.
Yes. But anyway, so I've learned both of these songs, and I mean, it's just my personal preference of the Signals sound, and with Subdivisions, I enjoy that guitar solo. I just love the soaring harmonics that come at the latter half of that solo.
Yes, and then going back into the verse, that descending line of the bass, as well, such a great moment. Yeah,
when they head back into that chorus, it's just magic.
Oh, that is the chorus, right? Not the verse. So we just gonna go ahead and decide, write down Subdivisions.
Yeah, if I had to pick to keep one of those, Tom Sawyer versus Subdivisions, always have to be Subdivisions. Go back and listen to our first episode to hear all the reasons why. Mm-hmm. But man, it's just such a strong song.
It really is. So we are now on to Fly By Night versus Time Stand Still. I am upset because, as I've discussed in previous episodes, I have a strong emotional connection to both of these songs. Mm-hmm. They mean a lot to me. Both
and the interesting thing too, which obviously was not planned for it to turn out this way, but much like Subdivisions and Tom Sawyer being kind of on the same wavelength as being openers and of being like, this is our sound.
Yeah.
Fly By Night and Time Stand Still both deal with a similar philosophical idea about time and about phases of your life shifting.
That is very true. And I didn't even notice or think about that until now. That makes us harder. And both of them, they sound completely different. We're in completely different eras of Rush here, but both really, really strong songs, really entertaining, just really good songs. I joke every time. I'm like, all we do is sit here and talk about how every song is a good song, but it's true. I mean, my gut reaction to this is to pick Time Stands Still, just because I just don't think I could ever live without that song. But I love Fly By Night. I know we haven't discussed it much, but I have to go with my gut of Time Stands Still.
Yeah, I mean, because I kind of want to break down what both these songs mean, and especially in comparing both of them side by side. Because Fly By Night, I mean, it's the bright-eyed everything.
Sorry, I just distracted Adam because I'm wearing his Fly By Night Rush shirt currently.
One of my all-time favorite shirts.
Yes, it's completely has bleach stains and is torn up, but it's the best shirt ever.
I bought it, I believe, from the Rush merch store online right before they discontinued it.
So does this sway your decision, me wearing this shirt?
No.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I have a decision, but back to the comparison. Fly By Night is the bright-eyed, youthful, what is ahead of me on my path of life. Like, I'm excited, I'm ready to go, and my past can just kind of sit there in my past, which then paves the way to Time Stands Still, which is a much more mature look back and saying, why did I take things so fast?
Yeah, it's so interesting too, because Fly By Night, they are so young when they wrote these songs. And then Time Stands Still, they're still young, but they're much older and more experienced. How many more studio albums under their belt? How many tours? How many concerts and life changes and marriages and babies? And so much has happened. And then to be reflected in that maturity in this, the maturity reflected in this later song.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm trying to think of the timeline. Because Fly By Night was, 75? And then Time Stands Still, or Hold Your Fire from the album, was 87.
87?
Yeah.
I always thought it was... Oh, I was thinking about Signals again. Sorry. We're on Hold Your Fire. Sorry.
Yeah, Hold Your Fire is 87. And so that's, a 12-year gap?
That's a lot
of
years.
They're, in their 30s at that point. And, I mean, just thinking back, early 20s, I mean, that's where we're sitting now. We're sitting, at the start of our 30s.
I'm sorry. I thought you were saying where we're sitting now in our early 20s.
Closer to the Time Stands Still phase of our lives.
Right.
And that is, I mean, if you want to know the difference between a 20-year-old and a 30-year-old, Fly By Night versus Time Stands Still.
And so does this mean, since we're in the Time Stands Still era, that's our choice?
But it is hard to, it's hard for me to think of both of these songs and not get emotional, because just the strong emotions tied to the messages of these songs. But Time Stands Still for me is the more poignant of the two. And even just everything musically aside, just what the message holds is like a hopeful cautionary tale. Don't take for granted where you are in life, but look back and appreciate what you've gone through, but don't keep pressing the gas. Allow yourself to enjoy the moment that you're in and understand you can't stop it all, but you should pause and look around. Which
I think has become more apparent as we've become parents. Having kids is so easy to just try to get through the day, and it's easy to just get distracted and not live in the moment. And time is so fleeting when you have kids. It goes so fast. It's ridiculous that our infant is now almost 4. Yeah. And so I think this song, also being a more mature song, means a lot more in that aspect, as well as we're getting older, like you were saying. And I feel a little bit silly, but it wasn't until the episode last week when we talked about Limelight versus Time Stands Still that the lyric and the name of the song clicked, that he's telling time stand still, almost like time, stand still, which I always thought it was just a weird Rush thing where it should be time stands still, And I was like, oh, it's just cool that they took the S off of Stands. And then I was like, I was having this mental realization happening during the episode last week, and I didn't say anything. I'm like, wait, time, stand still. Like he's pleading with time.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I didn't ever catch that.
And I think that's what makes it a more powerful song. Because like if you look at it in a musical theater type setting, that is your want song. Like,
yeah.
That is your declaration. That is, that's the showstopper song right there of like, here's a person that is feeling the weight of time slipping away. And this is them saying, if I could just get a moment that I could just have to reflect on everything and just look at everything and really put together what's happening, that could just fix everything. It's like just this incredible moment that if it was put into a jukebox musical, man, that would be the showstopper.
That would be, and it is the showstopper of the album. There's a lot of really good songs on that album, but I think that is the pinnacle song. There is the highest point, and there are many songs we could talk about on that album, obviously, that come close, like Mission and stuff. But I think that song, it just is just that step above for me in comparing with Fly By Night, which we also love.
Yes.
So when we come to a decision, I will write on this paper.
Yes. Time stands still. She wrote on the paper TSS, so I had to.
So that leaves us with the final two songs in the most popular Rush songs bracket, Subdivisions versus Time Stand Still, which this is even harder because both of these I feel like are in a very similar category in my brain of synthy emotional attachments.
Yeah.
Like
both of these I have
sense?
very strong emotional ties to.
Yes.
Which, I mean, is interesting the way that it turned out. That at this point we come to the two songs that out of this bracket that we are most emotionally tied to.
Yeah, I know. What a cool way that this turned out, and the way that you originally bracketed them too. It was arbitrary, but at the same time, was it?
Yeah, because originally the pairings I wanted to go for songs that were similar in some way, whether it was lyrically in the themes that were touched on, or musically, or kind of popularity as far as public perception. And then sometimes just pairing songs that, even though they're, like in this one, even though they're the most popular, maybe they're from different eras, just so that there isn't as much similarity, but they're both good in their own right. And so then it makes it a difficult decision because they are just different from each other. That's kind of what I've done in all the pairings for this entire project.
So what a cool way for it to end up now. With these two, I'm sitting here pulling my hair out because this is a difficult decision.
Yeah. I mean, it like right now, just because I've had this big long spiel about Time Stands Still.
I know. I know. We just both were like, oh my gosh, time.
Like to really dig into Subdivisions again. And like I said, go back to episode 1 if you want to hear our full discussion on Subdivisions. But like just to hit on the high point, for me, the big thing there is I identify with the message so much. Yeah. Because I always felt like an outsider. And so to get validation that it's okay to be an outsider and that there are other outsiders in the world, you're not the only one. And it's better to not compromise on who you are than to try to fit in. That was something that at the time that I got really into Signals, that was a message that I really needed.
Yeah, this song is one of my go-tos. Like, if I'm going to listen to Rush in the car and I don't just hit shuffle, I will probably at least half the time choose Subdivisions to start with, just because it's so good. And the same goes for Time Stands Still, though, when I'm in the car.
Yeah.
And so I honestly don't know how to choose here.
Yeah. And there can be no ties.
I know. And like, I have to remember
rule.
This is just for fun. Because I'm getting stressed.
Man. Yeah, because each time I think that, okay, I made my choice, it's like, well.
I know. It's a really hard decision. It's the hardest decision I've made in my entire life.
Oh my gosh. This
is too hard.
That's it. We give up.
Podcast over.
No.
Okay, I can't. Every time I look at the paper, I'm like, no, that one. And I'm like, no, to the other one.
Oh, okay. So let's break this down. Because musically, comparing the two, Subdivisions, I think, is...
Sorry, I know why I'm choosing which one I'm choosing now.
Okay.
Sorry. I have to choose Time Stands Still. I cannot live without that bass fill. As good as Subdivisions is, that bass fill is what puts it over the edge for me.
Oh, you're just making this so hard. Because for me, Subdivisions is so much more of an ensemble piece.
That's true.
Just every part is so good on their own, and the way that they work together to give this surge, it just showcases how good they are at working together in unison to create this wall of sound and emotion to just build up to these climaxes, which you also get in Time Stands Still. But I feel like arrangement wise, Subdivisions is just much more musically intense, but it also makes it hard because Time Stands Still is also a very strong ensemble piece.
And what about that very last bit of Time Stands Still, the last verse?
With when it just like explodes and Summer going fast.
Yep. You know that you get super emotional on that part.
That is true. If you ever want to see me like get close to tears, like if I'm just like really getting into Time Stands Still and just like reflecting on my life, that song will do it. And that part. Oh. And Amy Mann is just such a great addition.
What?
Amy Mann.
Oh, Amy Mann.
Yeah, the featured artist on that track.
The female voice on that track.
I think that's what does it for me in the end.
I've convinced you. It was hard though, because man, Subdivision is... I just think about that opening synth in 7/8. 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 do.
Yeah.
Like how cool is that opening? Yeah. And it's the album opening. If you're a music nerd, 7/8, you understand that. But
yeah, which
there's a lot of time signature changes in that song too. It's a technical song.
It really is. But in the end, I feel good about my decision with Time Stands Still.
You mean the decision that I brought you to?
Yes, the decision that you talked me into. But
okay, I am getting the pencil.
The permanent pencil.
The permanent pencil. And I'm going to write TSS. I don't know if you could hear that, but I circled it aggressively.
Aggressive circleage just going down over here.
Circleage is not a word.
But I do want to hit again on just something that Rush does that they do so well is using time signatures as an effective tool for moving their music forward. They aren't just using weird time signatures just to use weird time signatures, but they're using time signatures as the tool that they are. And I think, so here's my personal opinion on time signatures. If you're calling it weird, you aren't doing it right. Because you shouldn't be thinking, oh, wow, they're using a weird time signature. It should just be feeling natural. And that's what they do so well. Because they make you feel the pulse of the music, whatever it is. And so, you can go at the theory aspect and realize, oh, it's really cool that they're using this time signature that's not typically used in popular music in such a way that furthers their ideas. But you never sit there thinking, wow, they're using a really weird time signature here.
Well, and the interesting thing about that song is starting it in 7/8, then when it switches to 3/4 later, that's what sounds weird. It's going to what people deem as like the most normal time signature of 3/4.
Yeah.
Then that sounds off more than the 7/8 ever does.
Yeah. Which, they hit 3/4 in the the chorus area after having gone to 4/4 in the verse. And so it's like they're changing it up.
Oh, I'm thinking about the very last 3/4 that finishes the song.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all of that music theory stuff, you can get into it and you can pick apart why and analyze and stuff. But analyzation has its place. If you want to learn music and if that's what you're studying, it's great. But I think a lot of times people, when they analyze popular music, end up doing a disservice to themselves and to other people because they place too high a priority on it. And I think that's where Rush really shines, is that they know music really well. They know the theory of it really well so that they can use these tools, but the tool never gets in the way of good songwriting.
Absolutely. Another reason for everyone to go listen to Rush, because they'll never be bored.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of crazy to say that we have officially finished the first group of songs, the popular Rush songs, starting with 8 songs down to 1. And the winner is Time Stand Still.
Yeah. And so we will have this bracket posted and you guys can go there and look at it and you can listen to all the songs. Maybe we'll even make a Spotify playlist that you could go follow. Maybe also an Apple Music playlist. You could go follow that and listen to. And then you can make your own decision, fill out your own bracket. Let us know what your top song would be. And next week, we'll start getting into the least popular Rush songs.
According to everyone that's not really a Rush fan, right? Because
well, even with Rush fans, just among...
Is it all of Crest of Steel? Be honest.
No.
I love Crest of Steel, just for the record, everyone. I love that album.
But no, so this is where we'll start getting even more into the lyrics and really picking apart the songs more, because with these popular songs, obviously because they're popular, a lot more people listen to them and a lot more people have had a chance to get their own read on them and figure out what it means to them. And so rather than doing that for these songs, we wanted to just hit on our personal feelings on them. But kind of moving forward with a lot of these songs that we'll be discussing, especially in this least popular bracket that we'll be starting next week, this will be a chance for us to really dig into some more lyrics, dig into some more, nerdy things about them, in addition to our own emotional responses to them.
Yeah, and personal experiences and everything. It's just finding our personal connection to them, and then hopefully that you guys will listen to them and form your own opinions and personal connections, and really so it can enrich and change your life and have something new to listen to, or rediscover it if you haven't listened to it in a while too, or have a new perspective on maybe a Rush song that you dismissed in the past.
Mm-hmm. And that really gets to the heart of why we're doing this. We want there to be more discussion on the songs of Rush, not just Rush as a band and Rush as this cultural phenomenon, but really digging into all of their body of work. Not just the favorites, not just the things that people already know, but really get to know the band, not because, they're heroes that need worshiping or anything like that, but because it genuinely will change your outlook on life and it will help you become a better person because you've gotten to know the work of these people.
I agree.
So with that, next week, to kick off the least popular Rush songs, we will be battling out Face Up from Roll the Bones and Dog Ears from Test for Echo.
We will see you next week.